Hello everybody, how are we all doing? In this video, I'll be talking about why we do not need others to understand our OCD in order to get better. Whether that is your husband, your wife, your friends, your mum, your dad, your brother, your sister, whoever, and why you don't need them to fully understand what's going on in order for you to overcome this disorder and recover. First of all, we cannot expect others to understand because they do not have what we are going through. OCD is a very complex, very nuanced, very challenging disorder. It's very hard to explain it without having it. It's very hard to do it justice without actually suffering from it. Now, it's great if you have a supportive network around you, and that can help in many ways. However, please don't expect them to fully grasp what you are going through. Now, if you are relying on them for reassurance, if you are venting to them, if you are confessing to them, if you are confiding in them, because with your OCD and all the things that's going through your mind and things that you're stuck with and things that you're suffering with, it's a problem. Because they're going to see you as somebody that's in distress, somebody that's needs help, somebody that's, you're very sad, you're stuck, right? So they're going to try and help you. But whilst it's very well intentioned when they give you that advice or they give you that support or whatever, that can often be reassurance. And what people fail to see is that can become the exact problem keeping you stuck. For example, when I was suffering, I confessed to my girlfriend then, now wife. I confessed about all the thoughts that I was having, past events, real events, false memories. So she could tell me that, oh, Sam, you've done nothing wrong. You're not a bad person. You would never do anything wrong. It's just your OCD, blah, de, blah, de, blah. That would then give me reassurance. But that was like giving an addict their drug. My drug, I was addicted to certainty. I was addicted to reassurance. I was addicted to figuring out and having an answer. And so I used to explain everything to my girlfriend. She would say, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Everybody will still love you regardless. Or even if you did this, I'll still love you or whatever. I then get that relief. And then I feel like, oh, I'm now over this. But OCD would morph, it would switch, it would find something else. Okay, so when we speak to our loved ones about this, you've got to be very, very careful. Because for a start, they have no idea what you're going through, because how can they? They don't have OCD. Think about this. If they had some obscure foot disease, as a random example, and you don't have it yourself, you could read up on it, but you're never going to fully understand the inner workings of it and how it operates and how painful it can be and how to get better or whatever. That you're not going to understand it because you don't have it yourself. And OCD is like that, okay? OCD is not something that just the layman can just understand. It doesn't quite work like that because it's way too complex. And the trouble that you're also going to find is that when you start talking about OCD to people will dumb it down, right? So for example, let's say you are at a restaurant with your friends and you start talking about your OCD. Now, as soon as somebody hears the word OCD, their ears will perk up and think, oh, okay, I've got OCD. I can relate to that. And I had a great example of this, right? I was talking to friends because although I don't sort of openly talk about, I work with OCD just because you're on the back foot immediately, what's OCD and so on. But obviously people know that I have OCD from when I was stuck. And they obviously now know that I'm a coach for people with OCD. And somebody said to me, oh, Sam, I heard you're a coach and you work with people with OCD. I said, oh, yeah. And they said, oh, yeah, I have OCD. And I went, okay, are you getting help? How is it going? What, how are you with it? Are you suffering? Are you stuck? And they said, oh, no, not really. No, it's just like a quirky little trait. When I put the fish fingers in the oven, I like them all lined up. And I just went, And that's because, although that would have annoyed me many, many years ago, when I was really stuck thinking, oh my God, if only you knew what OCD was really like. If only you knew it's not just a quirky little trait that you boast about, that you show off. It's a very debilitating disorder. However, I'm at a place now that I don't expect anyone to understand. There will be those remarks all the time. People will say, oh yeah, I like things lined up. I'm so OCD. Oh yeah, I like things nice and neat and organized. I'm very OCD like you, Sam. People will say that. I couldn't care less because I don't have that expectation on them to understand. I don't place that demand upon them that they must understand OCD, because how on earth can they? Let's be very realistic here. If you don't have obsessive compulsive disorder, you are not going to know the ins and outs of the disorder. You're not going to know the intrusive thoughts that one has. You're not going to know the taboo nature of the thoughts and the urges and the images. You're not going to know how it links to past events and different false memories. You're not going to know the obscure fears and obscure themes that it can latch to, the existential fears, the sensory motor, all the ins and outs of OCD. They're not going to know that. If I sat down and explained that to them, they'd be absolutely bamboozled within about 10 seconds of the conversation. And I said, oh yeah, let me tell you about existential OCD. They'd be like this. Wait, what? So people are scared that they're the only person on the planet. They're scared they're trapped in this simulation. Wait, what? Let me talk about sensory motor OCD. Wait, so people are actually stuck with their blinking, like trapped in that sensation. Why don't they just stop thinking about their blinking? People will dumb it down as if like, just don't think about it, right? But that's not their fault. That's not their fault. And unfortunately, there can be people working in the professional field that can advise things like that. Yet again, very well intentioned. Very well intentioned. They're only going to try and help you. But unfortunately, OCD is a very misunderstood disorder. And it's too complex for people to fully understand unless you've got it. And this is why I'm a big believer in, unless you have it, I don't really see how you can give people help. And that's not me downing anybody, because I think it's great in a way where people don't have it and they try and help people in a very well-intentioned way. I think that's great. But the problem is that OCD is so sneaky and it's so clever that it will run rings around somebody that isn't clued up on how it operates, right? Because OCD is one step ahead at all times, right? It knows the thing you're scared of, right? If it was as simple as just liking things lined up, then anybody could just advise on that and just say, oh, don't do that. Or they would feed your compulsion. They would say, oh, yeah, just make sure everything's lined up then. Or make sure everything's neat and organized. And, if it was just a classic stereotypical quirky trait, you wouldn't have people, suffering, housebound for years, sadly taking their own life because of this disorder. People will make it this thing where it's completely unserious and almost a bit of a joke, right? But that's out of our hands. The mission we're on is to spread the awareness and get good, solid, proper OCD advice out there to save lives, because this disorder takes lives, unfortunately. It's that serious, right? So, that's the mission we're on, but we cannot help any outside noise. If there's outside noise from people saying, oh no, OCD is just this, it's just that, there's nothing we can do about that, because unless you have it, you're not going to really understand it. So back to my previous point, if you're confiding in your partner, in your friends, in your mum, in your dad, and you're getting the reassurance, whilst it seems nice, whilst you're probably hearing what you want to hear, you're not hearing what you need to hear to get better. Please don't expect for others to understand you if they do not have it. Take my wife, Amy, for example. She's done a few videos with me on this channel. She did a webinar with me a couple of weeks ago. Now, Amy is clued up on OCD, as in she's seen somebody firsthand suffer with OCD. But she doesn't know the ins and outs of it. She doesn't know how it morphs, how it operates, how it squeezes in around certain fears and locks in just out of reach with the uncertainty. She doesn't understand that, and I wouldn't expect her to understand, bless her. I wouldn't say, oh, you've seen somebody suffer with OCD, therefore you should know how to break this down. No, right? How can she? She doesn't have it herself. She can be very supportive, and she understands more than the most person, more than the average person. Of course, she's lived with somebody for the past 7.5 years with OCD. Three to four of those years being stuck. Now I'm recovered, so she doesn't see that anymore. But she's seen an OCD sufferer firsthand, but she still doesn't understand it inside out. And I wouldn't expect her to, by any means. So when it comes to getting better and looking at unconditional acceptance and breaking down your fears and cutting your compulsions, that's for you alone, right? You're not trying to be unconditionally accepting so you can then tell all your friends about it. They're not going to understand it. Most people aren't very rational. Rational thinking really helps for you, the OCD sufferer, because OCD pounces on any irrational, crooked thinking. So if you are irrational, you're giving OCD room to maneuver. You're allowing it to operate. You're giving it an inch, it pounces, and it will run riot. It will hijack that and completely go crazy. And that's what it does. Okay? So this is why you look at these tools. It's not to think, oh, let's sit down in front of the family and go, oh yeah, but I can accept this, I can accept that. They're not going to understand you. They're not going to understand why you can accept what you're trying to accept with the core fears and so on. Unconditional acceptance is for you and for you alone. And people say, yeah, but people don't think like this. That's not a way of thinking. Okay, you might not think it's normal thinking, but is it healthy? Because unfortunately, society is very irrational. And when you've got obsessive compulsive disorder, which thrives off irrational thinking and thrives off conditional self-acceptance, you're going to be bang in trouble when it comes to getting better. So this is why it's critical that you are looking at your thinking, seeing how you are stuck, and changing your thinking. You don't need your family's approval to change your thinking. You don't need your friends' go-ahead in order to change your thinking and apply unconditional self-acceptance. OCD latches to conditional acceptance. If you are saying, I can accept myself only if this, and OCD is going to go, ha ha ha, fuck you, going straight after that thing that you can accept, that thing that you deem as too far. Hence why taboo themes are very common. Guilt-related themes are very, very common. Oh my God, if only they knew. Those themes are very, very common for that exact reason. So as it comes to tackling these fears, you do not need your neighborhood's go-ahead. You don't need everybody around you to understand what you're going through. They won't. No matter how many times you explain it. It's unfortunate. It's not ideal. But it's not a necessity for your closest loved ones to understand you. And how can they? How on earth can they? Let's really think about this rationally. How can somebody who doesn't have OCD sit down with you and understand how this disorder operates and maneuvers and morphs and latches? And when you're triggered, I see it now because I'm recovered, right? But I get OCD, I understand OCD, of course, so I can see how when it's triggered, what's going on. But because I've been triggered for so long, when I look at somebody that's triggered, I can see the perspective of somebody who doesn't have OCD and how they would view that, right? Because all of a sudden, somebody can be acting relatively calmly, they can be fine, you think, oh yeah, it's fine, let's go out for lunch, whatever. And boom, they're triggered, and it's like their world has ended. They're doing compulsions, obvious outward external compulsions, they're doing physical compulsions, they're chasing that reassurance like a drug. Again, they're coming back for more, they're coming back for more, they're coming back for more, right? They can make quite erratic, impulsive, knee-jerk decisions. They can do some very sort of, whoa, where did that come from? Because when you're triggered, it's life and death. It's fight or flight. Your brain is preparing you to run, escape, okay? So you're going to get that with OCD. So please don't expect your partners, your mum, your dad, your friends, your sisters, your brothers, your dog, your cat. Don't expect them to understand what you're going through. In an ideal world, wouldn't it be great if everybody said, right, you've got OCD, you need to learn RBT, you need to do your exposures, you need to change your beliefs, change your behaviours, change your habits, and then you'll be fine, right? But nobody understands that unless you have chronic OCD. Somebody could read all the books in the world on OCD, But unless they have it, I really struggle to see how they'd fully understand it. People can get their knowledge to relatively decent before I get cramp in my leg. People can get their knowledge to relatively decent, of course. But you're missing that cutting edge unless you have chronic OCD. It's way too complex. It's too nuanced. Look at some themes that it goes after. Many times on a call, we can actually giggle at times and think, could you imagine explaining this to a non-OCD sufferer? We can sometimes sit and laugh because we both get it, we both know what's going on, but it's just OCD is so crafty, it's so clever. You're like, I can see he's gone after that. You can see what he's doing there as we'll break it down together. Somebody without OCD would be absolutely bamboozled, totally bewildered by how it's moving around, okay? So don't expect others to understand. People will say they're so OCD. People will show it off like it's a quirky trait. Oh, I'm OCD like you. Yeah, I've got OCD like you. Yeah, you. Yeah, I like it like this. I like it like that. Oh, I can't do this because if that's not happened, I've got to check this 1 million times, which of course, that's part of chronic OCD as well. But it'd be very stereotypical and people will boast about it as if it's a quirky trait. But that's okay, because how can we expect them to understand? And that is just how people will view it. And that is why we're on this journey, to bring an OCD out of the dark. OCD is incredibly serious. I used to get very angry when I used to hear people talk about OCD and they didn't understand it. But then as you become more accepting, you become more rational, you realise, I can totally see why people say things like that, because they don't get it. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. We don't need them to understand in order to overcome this disorder. Guys, to get in touch, please email phil@ocdrecovery.com or message the WhatsApp number to get in touch with us coaches here, and we can book you in to help you with your chronic OCD. And know there is a way forward, there is a way over, there is hope, and you can get better. You don't just have to settle for what you've got, and you don't have to be stuck forever, guys. You really can recover. My name is Sam. I don't know if I even said that. My name is Sam. We have other coaches here. You have Nick, Momin, Elliot, Rob, and Gemma. Don't think I'm forgetting anyone. So please get in touch with Phil and we will book you in. You're not alone, guys. There is a chance of recovery. You really can get better, but don't expect the world to understand you.